Welcome back, YouTube. So today I got another article from the New York Times again. This one's called Suspicious Minds. It's by Stephen Karutz. Suspicious Minds. Called Mangling with Weirdness and Wonder at a conference devoted to quote-unquote ancient aliens. It's in Pasadena, California. It takes place in Pasadena, California. So, it was barely 2 hours into day one of AlienCon, and 500 years of accepted history and science were already being tossed out. 3,000 people had gathered inside the Civic Auditorium here for a panel discussion featuring presenters from Ancient Aliens, the History Channel documentary series. Everyone had questions about whether we were alone in the universe, about what our government really knows, about humanity's very origins. One of the network's most popular and longest running shows, Season 13, resumed on July 20th, of Ancient Aliens, is itself a series of questions. Many are posed rhetorically, by an unseen narrator intoning over a wide shot of a rubbly archaeological site. According to the show's talking heads, extraterrestrials may have had a role not only in the extermination of the dinosaurs, but also in the construction of the Egyptian pyramids. Carl Sagan, the popular scientist who captivated television audiences of the 1970s and 80s, once said, "Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence." But Mr. Sagan has been dead for years, and many Americans of the internet age have been in a mood to challenge established ideas. There has been a resurgence of the flat earth theory. More than a few believe that global warming is a hoax, that survivors of mass shootings are crisis actors. Yet for many at the conference and elsewhere, this is not simply a political divide. We now know the history that had been taught for years exclude the experiences of so many, such as African Americans, women, and the working poor. What else had been left out? Trust in the government and leaders who could sit it all straight is historically low. And there are so many people ready to believe that aliens visited Earth before recorded history that some 10,000 attendees paid to visit this conference over 3 days. And the audience was Chris Bailey, a neatly dressed lawyer who had traveled from Arizona with his 2 adult sons. Just because someone says the Egyptians made the temples with ropes and wooden rulers doesn't make it true, Mr. Bailey said. We shouldn't accept blindly things we've been taught by quote-unquote scientists. Earlier that morning, a woman had risen from the crowd and told the Ancient Aliens producers, I'm indoctrinating my children in your show, so they'll ask questions and not believe everything they're told. During the question and answer period, a wheelchair-bound man of about 60 was handed a microphone. He asked, "Do you believe we are indigenous to this planet?" It was Giorgio who answered him. Naturally, Giorgio A. Tsoukalos, 44, the show's breakout star, the one they'd most come to see and get their picture with. He was dressed as he would be all weekend, in the khaki shirt and pants and sturdy leather boots of a field archaeologist, though in the strict academic sense, he has no such accreditation. Before appearing on TV, he worked as a bodybuilding promoter with Publishing Legendary Times, a newsletter about extraterrestrials. He is one of the show's so-called ancient astronaut theorists. Yeah, Tsoukalos, he talks a lot. He has nice hair. It is not fancy credentials, but the way he expresses gut beliefs that makes him compelling to viewers. That and his hair. Perhaps no other figure in current American life, besides the president, is so vividly linked to his hairstyle. The duo was as epic in person. A brown, bushy bird's nest, sprayed up on all sides to achieve absurd height. It gave him a look to perpetual amazement of someone who had been electrocuted. The man in the wheelchair waited along with the crowd to hear if Earth was in fact our ancestral home. Behind the speaker's table, Mr. Tsoukalos leaned in and, as he so often does on TV, made an incredible claim with total confidence and goofy grin. "No, exactly," the man said. Hurriedly dropped the mic. That was his answer to his question, are we indigenous to the Earth? Because, yes, some people believe we are the aliens. That's why humans are kind of different from other species. I think we're the only species where the females' breasts stay the same size throughout their life. I think other species, they're different. Back to the article. The primary pathway into ancient aliens is the ancient astronaut theory. Is a book called Chariots of the Gods, rivaling Led Zeppelin IV as a mystical hippie era artifact passed through the generations. It suggests that extraterrestrials gave technology and culture to the Egyptians, Mayans, and other ancient civilizations. Which sounds fringy, except it has sold more than 7 million copies, with a 50th anniversary edition out from Berkeley Books this summer. The 1970 documentary film of Chariots was nominated for an Academy Award. The book's Swiss author, Erich von Däniken, flew 12 hours from Zurich with his ponytail young assistant, Ramon, to speak at AlienCon 83 and slightly stooped. He still works every day, he told backstage on day one, crisscrossing the globe like a missionary. With his severe Swiss-German accent in English and touchy impatience with critics, Mr. von Däniken is now, with the visibility amped, Mr. Tsoukalos and one of the familiar personalities of Ancient Aliens. There is also George Noory, the genial mustachioed host of the late-night radio show Coast to Coast AM. Linda Moulton Howe, who once made a documentary suggesting that flesh wounds on some Alabama cattle were alien markings. Nick Pope, an ex-British Ministry of Defense official, and William Henry, a groovy investigative mythologist. David Hatcher Childress, who gets nearly as much screen time as Mr. Tsoukalos, is a real-time Indiana Jones who climbs the megalithic ruins in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley, equipped with a brown felt hat and a notebook. Since 1984, he has operated Adventures Unlimited Press, whose hundreds of paperback titles, several of which he has written, roughly chart the conspiracy du jour. Atlantis, Nikola Tesla, the Mayan calendar, recently Bigfoot. Before Ancient Aliens, these believers had been scattered on the margins, hawking their ideas at small gatherings in the Nevada desert. Now they'd been unified under one tent and given a podium by a network with the sheen of educated TV. Did that awesome responsibility temper them? Oh no. It's a good show. Here's Mr. Childress in an episode from season 10 called The Alien Architects. So there we have an ancient grid structure, probably built by extraterrestrials, possibly to power their craft, that's now being reconstructed today by the military. Such broad, unverified claims are why Ancient Aliens is taken by some to be carnival entertainment, and by others as something darker, a show that traffics in intellectual hucksterism and challenges facts. The idiocy, fabrications, and lies of Ancient Aliens reads one headline from Smithsonian.com. Another critique posted to Medium by Barry Becker, a professor at Temple University, argued that since the Apollo 11 mission, Americans have lacked a popular narrative to explain the vast cosmos and our origins and destiny within it. In Ancient Aliens, we can see philosophy's mediated corpse, writes Mr. Becker, who called the show an attack on logic, rationality, and the nature of evidence. For Kevin Burns, naysayers like Mr. Becker add little to the discussion. A veteran TV producer who is often confused with the highbrow filmmaker Ken Burns. He was old enough to remember Chariots of the Gods and to notice similarities with the 2008 movie Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which Lucasfilm hired him to promote with a TV special. Envisioning an updated Chariots, he approached the History Channel with the Ancient Aliens concept, which grew from a 2-hour special into a series. Initially, Mr. Burns included skeptics on the show, but, he said, we found that they had nothing to say other than, there's no proof. If we were going to do a show about the birth of Jesus, would we have people who say, this is ridiculous? No. The invocation of religion is deliberate. In Mr. Burns' view, Ancient Aliens succeeds because it explores spirituality and the mystery of life in an increasingly secular, data-driven culture. Like religion, it offers seekers an origin story. It's not about little green men in our outer space. That's the 3-headed snake, lady, that gets you into the tent, Mr. Burns said. It's really a show about looking for God. Science would have you believe we are the result of nothing more than a chance assemblage of matter. The real truth is we don't know. It goes on to say, the questions posed by the ancient astronaut theorists, however far-fetched, serve a rare purpose. According to Mr. Burns, it allows the audience to wonder, and very few things on television do that. Next section, selling the Stardust. In the marketplace, the gymnasium-sized room at AlienCon, with the merch booths, the cast members existed comfortably with crystal jewelry sellers, practitioners of iridology, and divine muscle testing. The author of a science fiction series called Grey Guardians, the producers of the UFO government cover-up thriller The Phoenix Incident, Sasquatch Syndicate, which sold Bigfoot action figures, a man and woman into cosplay who were both dressed like Giorgio, and the promoters of the Sedona Orgone vortex, which promised to produce positive energy and block electromagnetic fields. On day one, a disheveled-looking Jack Nicholson was spotted shaking out the offerings. Or was it an imposter? Another mystery. In the long line of fans who had paid $25 to get Giorgio's autograph was Fabian Garcia, who had come with his daughter, Amanda, and young grandsons, Austin and Cruz. Mr. Garcia said he wanted to get the full story from the Ancient Aliens producers and cast. I want to go. What else can't you show? That's a TV show that devoted an entire episode to how alien technology might have helped Hitler in any way. Being censored was surprising to hear. But Mr. Garcia insisted, I want to know more. His grandsons just wanted to meet Giorgio, a cartoon explorer come to life. When Mr. Garcia babysits the boys, he watches Ancient Aliens. Now, he said, when he turns on the TV, Cruz 6 tells him, go to the show with the guy with the crazy hair. The kid wants to see Ancient Aliens. Mr. Burns went on stage and told the fans how he'd met Giorgio, then living near San Diego, and put him on TV, believing the author of Chariots was dead. Mr. Burns had asked a staffer to find the modern-day version. This was for the Indiana Jones TV special in 2008. I see this strange tanned young gentleman with poofy hair, Mr. Burns recalled. I said, who's that? They said, you wanted me to find the new Von Daniken. That's the guy who said, bring him in. Over dinner at a Greek cafe in Old Pasadena, on the eve of the convention, Mr. Tsoukalos insisted he never intended to become a media personality. I never sought out to be on TV, he said. He was wearing what, for him, passed as a celebrity disguise. A hat. It's a totally weird experience. As if to illustrate the point, a woman approached us on the patio and said, excuse me, I love this show. Then tried to palm him a $100 bill to buy his dinner. He politely declined. The next day, I watched him pose for photos for more than an hour with fans, including a feeble old woman who waited until the very end to speak to him. What she whispered to him wasn't audible to me, and no one would tell me after. But the old woman began weeping. He bent down and comforted her. What did they see in him? That's one of the greatest mysteries I have yet to solve, he said lightly. Mr. Burns told me that his star presenter was initially thrown by his sudden fame, and hurt and embarrassed by a widely circulated meme that sends up his enthusiasm for attributing seemingly any unexplained mystery, and some explained ones, to aliens. I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. In quotes. He felt accurately he was being mocked. A frequent criticism had it that he wasn't qualified to appear on Ancient Aliens. Unfair reality, since MIT isn't giving out PhDs in ancient astronaut theory. Mr. Tsoukalos discovered Mr. Von Daniken's books as a boy growing up in Switzerland at 14. The ideal indoctrination age, judging by the many convention goers who said They'd also latched onto chariots in junior high school. Later, he courted Mr. Von Däniken as a mentor and earned a degree in communications from Ithaca College. What was he if not a communicator? These days, he takes the jokes in stride. It goes to show the appreciation for the show, and views his celebrity as a complete adventure. A few years ago, he spoofed himself in a Taco Bell ad that aired during the Super Bowl. He will soon appear in a McDonald's commercial. One since he was making decent bank in his field. He has become a co-executive producer of Ancient Aliens and travels far and wide filming the show. While he was doing the AlienCon panels, his wife, Crix Beeble, was doing a brisk business selling t-shirts bearing his face for $25. Autograph photos for $25. The little gold spaceship pins that believers wear on their lapel as a Catholic might on a rosary. She designs the glass bead necklaces, $275, her husband wears on TV. A nifty bit of cross-promotion. But does he really believe this stuff? I don't believe, he said. I know. You couldn't fake the fire in his eyes. Even before our Musaka arrived, he was lecturing me on prehistoric men's contact with aliens. They came down from the sky and said, "Oh, you don't know how to make fire? Let us show you." But he wanted New York Times readers to know, I'm a skeptic. I don't buy everything hook, line, and sinker. There's a lot of weird stuff out there, man. He mentioned the flat earth believers, and then for people to argue, well, you believe in ancient astronauts, so the flat earth isn't too far off. That's what I have to deal with. It's like the two are not even related. They're not even in the same category. He sipped his wine and with all seriousness said, I'm a forensics guy. I need to touch, measure, feel, and see things. Now returning to Earth. A few weeks before AlienCon, I drove to rural Connecticut to see Kenneth Fitter, who has a PhD in anthropology. We sat along the Farmington River, across the road from his modest house. In addition to teaching archaeology at Central Connecticut State University, he has a reputation as a debunker of what he called pseudo-archaeology, appearing on TV and has written a book, Frauds, Myths, and Mysteries, which devotes a chapter to ancient astronaut theory. When I'd arrived, Mr. Feeder, 65, had shown me his worn paperback of Chariots of the Gods, which he had read as a child of the 60s, along with occultish books on witchcraft and reincarnation. But in college, he said he took classes with Pedro Armilas, a pre-Columbian Mesoamerican scholar, and moved away from mythology into the science camp. Love the ancient alien stuff relics on willful ignorance and temporal chauvinism. A disbelief that ancient people were capable of complex feats of engineering, Mr. Feeder said. I had read that the building of the Mayan temples was a mystery and think, why don't you ask Professor Armilas? He knows exactly how it was done. Many of his colleagues in the academy thought it better not to engage, Mr. Feeder said. My feeling was, it's a big mistake to ignore this stuff. The way Mr. Von Däniken gathered evidence. I look worldwide for facts and indications that prove my theory, he told the Swiss newspaper, was the opposite of the scientific method. Mr. Feeder wasn't rooting against the ancient astronaut theorists, finding hard proof. If there was a crashed UFO under the pyramids, I'd go, damn, that's awesome. But he added, science is all about evidence. The bar has to be higher than Giorgio walking around going, how did they do that? The rocks are so heavy. The ancient astronaut theory was immune to facts, though. It couldn't be stamped out with reasoning. You laid out the fallacious fallacies, and people didn't care. As far back as 1977, a joint BBC and PBS documentary discredited Mr. Von Däniken's thesis, with help from Mr. Sagan, showing how it rests on inaccuracies, on unrelated facts, and false similarities. Confronted by the filmmakers, Mr. Von Däniken admitted that piece of evidence in Chariots, a photo purported to be a spaceship parking bay on the Nazca Plain in Peru, was ridiculous. As a writer, he said, sometimes he was simply stimulating the reader, and one is allowed to do this. 40 years on, the photo was still there in new printings of Chariots, uncorrected. At the same time, Ramon, the assistant, told me that there was more demand than ever for his boss to speak, that he was no longer ridiculed. It's getting better for him, Ramon said. Ancient Aliens has its own vigorous rebuttals, including the documentary Ancient Aliens Debunked, a 3-hour tour de force of critical reasoning undermines somewhat when people discover the filmmaker was a Christian who believed in the truth of the story of Noah's Ark. But in presenting an alternative view of history, viewers in season 1 episode, Ancient Aliens had come to mean something for a population who felt duped by the so-called experts. Chris Bailey, the lawyer from Arizona, told me that although he'd been a good sheep in childhood, the truth was, even back then, he had doubted the version of the world he was taught. The show helped validate for me that suspicion he had. He said. And so, Ancient Aliens was filming new episodes, and Giorgio was starring in fast food commercials. And amazingly, Mr. Burns said, reruns of old episodes did just as well in the ratings. During AlienCon, he and the organizers announced the conference would expand to the East Coast, to Baltimore, this fall. So, that's the article, and actually there's one more. Last year, the New York Times ran a front-page story on a secret Pentagon UFO program, which inspired a 2-hour episode. The presenters were let loose to debate transhumanism, wormholes, God's presence in sound waves, our brains connecting to a universal intelligence, the way a smartphone links to Wi-Fi, our moon may be a giant spacecraft for extraterrestrials to monitor us. All these creatively connected dots, these ever-expanding cottage theories discussed by the cast members, it was affecting them. I've always been open-minded, clearly, Mr. Sokolow said, but lately he had become even more so. He had been considering the non-play physical realm, aliens, as something completely ethereal beings of light. Audiences were being radically opened to something had come unanchored. It was inevitable where things were headed. The moment came at one of the Ancient Aliens cast panels. During questions from the audience, everyone listened uncomfortably to a man who spoke at length in an agitated voice about certain flaws he discovered in the hard sciences. Sir, do you have a question? Mr. Burns interrupted. The man exclaimed, Why don't you challenge physics and math? I left the crowds and walked into Pasadena to get lunch. On the way back, I came upon a low-slung, 70s-style office building made of tan brown stucco, with a sign that read, intriguingly, The Planetary Society, in a swooshy font. I knocked on the glass door and a young volunteer, Sean, let me in. The non-governmental non-profit organization was dedicated to exploring space and our place within the cosmos, Sean said. One of the founders was Mr. Sagan, who himself had a lifelong fascination with the question of extraterrestrial life. He lent a beautiful quote to the plaque outside, saying of humans on Earth, We float like a mote of dust in the morning sky. The Planetary Society was one block from AlienCon, but it was empty of visitors. Sean gave me a tour of the current exhibit on solar sailing. A reflective sail is hoisted, and the present pressure from sunlight is harnessed to propel a small craft around the solar system. As the wind moves a sailboat, one of the silvery Mylar light sails hung from the ceiling. It was a wondrous, ingenious idea. It made me think of something Mr. Feeder said during our conversation. I had remarked that ancient aliens presented exciting ideas about our past. That's why the show was popular. To which he had replied, Isn't it so much more exciting to believe that humans, through their ingenuity and creativity, built these great structures? Well, that's the article, and well, I think I've been watching a lot of Ancient Aliens, and I mean, yeah, some of their things make sense, like the Serpent Mound in Ohio made by Native Americans. I mean, you'd only be able to do it if you were, like, viewing it from the sky. If you were, like, up in a helicopter or something, but I don't know, maybe they climbed trees a bunch of times to view it, but, I've read a lot of books, one called Secret History, about, those, when they talk about cattle mutilations, the, wound markings on the cattle being evidence of aliens. Yeah, like in those areas, there's high radiation levels where the cows are found dead. I mean, there's been hundreds of cases of that happening in Colorado alone. I think Colorado has the most cattle mutilation reports. A lot of times the cows have their tongues missing or split, and their eyes or ears might be missing, their sexual organs might be removed. Like, they might be bleeding, like, from their internal organs. their limbs are broken, suggests that they were dropped from extreme heights. There's usually a weird yellowish oily liquid around there, so there was a talk about vitrification. There are these stones found in the desert in like the Middle East. So in countries that don't have nuclear weapons, where they're the exact same type of stones that only occur after a nuclear testing in like Arizona or New Mexico. So I don't know, maybe ancient aliens is just something to excite the masses and just keep us, I don't know, distracted. But you guys, please let me know what you think. Comment below, or just a like or dislike, depending on what you think. Oh. I mean, they had one episode where it's like Indiana Jones: The Crystal Skull is definitely based on how in areas in like Peru, Ecuador, they found these elongated skulls that, well, I don't know, the Mayans were sort of into the skull elongation, or I don't know, you can look it up. The Mayans had this, it's kind of similar to foot binding, where at a young age they took their kids and they like would tie boards to their head to like elongate their skulls or something. And but I mean, the Mayans weren't in Peru really, they were Mexico, Guatemala, Belize. So I guess take this for what it's worth. I mean, history is written by the victors, the elites, and this is the New York Times, so it might have people might be trying to hide something or something. So I mean, there was an episode about Mohenjo-Daro where was it Mohenjo-Daro, or no, it was Darren Khufu, where it's just this extensive underground chambers that were so complex. They only shot from the inside. I wonder, how did ancient peoples do those, like, and like on the Easter Islands, where they said the heads, their explanation was they were moved with rollers made from trees. It's like, there really aren't that many trees on the Easter Islands, so it's like, you gotta wonder about some of this stuff, especially the more recent reports of a 1995 group of mountaineers. 9 were hiking Orden Mountain, which I guess they didn't know in the indigenous language means do not go there. So they were camping on like snowy night. Of course, there was like feet of snow, and the reporters said that in the middle of the night, it appears the mountaineers, they just ran out of their tent with probably no clothes on, maybe their socks, but yeah, they just ran without taking anything. So, I mean, unless you were chasing something deadly, or something deadly was chasing you, then why would you run outside in the snow with no clothes? But said they found the bodies of all 9 mountaineers all bunched together on the ground. They had all prematurely aged. Their their hair turned gray, their skin turned orange, so I don't know, whatever was following them was, I don't know, it's, please, leave me comments, let me know what you think, okay, stay creative, stay open-minded, keep making crafts, make homemade guitars, like, it's really easy, just find cardboard box and you string some rubber bands around it and it sounds really cool, and, yeah, so, I'll see you in the future. Bye. Love you.